All right. Well, welcome, guys. I am very excited to welcome Zen Honeycutt. She is a advocate for moms. She is the founder of Moms Across America. And because of her, I have been learning about the not so good news about toxins in our environment. And for the patients of mine that are watching, you've heard me mention it every day that I see you. And many of you remember me mentioning the term glyphosate and the active ingredient Roundup. And Zen here has been an advocate for basically eliminating glyphosate for 12 years now. So welcome, Zen.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you to all your patients. I really appreciate you having me on.
All right. And I just want to push this out is I just finished her book called Unstoppable, which is her story from what years does this span?
2012 to let's see, probably about
It came out in
2019.
19, I think, right?
Yeah, 19.
Okay. So right before COVID, I guess, huh?
Yes.
And she's all over the place. She's all over YouTube. She's all over Rumble, Instagram, and also, of course, works as the CEO and founder for Moms Across America. So, Zen, what I would like to have you do is before you tell your story, tell my patients or tell the listeners why we should care about glyphosate.
Well, why you should care about glyphosate is because it is the most widely used herbicide in the world. And it's not only sprayed on GMO crops as a weed killer, it's sprayed on non-GMO crops that are not organic, so not organic wheat, peas, beans, legumes, sugar. It's also sprayed on corn and soy that are, genetically modified to withstand it. So you are likely, and it doesn't, by the way, it does not wash or dry off or cook off. So it absorbs right into the plant. And glyphosate is a carcinogen, an endocrine disruptor. It causes liver and kidney disease. It decreases sperm. It androgenizes baby girls, making them more masculine. It carries an increased risk of preterm birth and miscarriages. It causes all kinds of nervous system damage, and it is a neurotoxin. According to Dr. Stephanie Seneff and Anthony Samsel, it is a major contributing factor to 40 different Western medical diseases. And 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 so it is, according to Dr. Don Huber, it makes DDT look like mouthwash. It is a highly problematic, probably one of the most problematic chemicals ever released on humankind. And it's sprayed to the tune of 280 million pounds a year on our food supply. That's both as a weed killer and as a drying agent on the non-organic crops that I mentioned: oats, peas, beans, legumes, wheat. It's sprayed as a drying agent just before harvest, and those are the residue levels left on those crops are don't wash, dry, or cook off, and we consume them. And so with practically every meal you are eating, if you're not eating organic, you are consuming glyphosate.
Right. And one of the fun facts that I picked up recently is how closely it was related to Agent Orange. And historically, Monsanto made Agent Orange, and we all remember, or through our parents, or I personally, and then younger people through their parents, remember how devastating Agent Orange was. And so how does then glyphosate, because we hear about GMO, not eating GMO and GMO seeds, how does that relationship connect with glyphosate?
So 80% of GMOs are engineered to withstand glyphosate herbicides, and they are called Roundup Ready, or they're otherwise known as herbicide tolerant GMOs. And that means that they're genetically engineered to withstand the spraying of glyphosate herbicides. There's other types of herbicides and other types of GMOs that are engineered to withstand other herbicides as well. But glyphosate herbicides that's the predominant one. And so the GMO crops are engineered to withstand glyphosate herbicides, and the planes or the tractors can drive over the GMO crop and spray it. The weeds around it will die, and the crop will not. It will continue to live. However, it will have high residue levels of glyphosate herbicides that we will then consume. So um, there are three kinds of GMOs. The first one is the one that I just mentioned, 80% are engineered to withstand glyphosate herbicides. The second one is Bt toxins, GMOs, that stands for bacteriotherogenesis. And that means that that's a bacteria from a carcass of a dead crane caterpillar that has been genetically engineered to constantly reproduce more toxins. Bt toxin is used in organic farming. However, it's not genetically engineered in that scenario of farming. So the Bt toxin just dissipates and dies out in about 4 hours. So in GMO farming, however, the monocrop culture GMO farming like corn or soy that's been genetically engineered to have the Bt toxin in it, that GMO crop is now a pesticide. It's a registered patented pesticide. So it has the pesticide built right in. And when the bug eats any part of the plant, whether it's the root, the stem, the stalk, or the fruit of the crop itself, then it will get that toxin into its stomach. It will constantly reproduce more toxin. That's what it's been genetically engineered to do, to be like a little toxin factory. It will then explode the stomach of the bug that eats it. It will put holes in the stomach, and then the toxin will leak out. And doesn't that, doctor, sound to you an awful lot like leaky gut,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
most of our children and many of our adults have now? Gut
Right.
dysbiosis, which is holes in the small intestines, which then leads to increased allergies and inflammation because of the food leaking out of the gut and the body not recognizing this foreign substance that has not been digested in the bloodstream. So then the body creates resistance to it and inflammation, and suddenly starts recognizing things that we humans have been eating for thousands of years, like wheat and dairy and eggs and nuts, as pathogens, right? As something that's toxic to the body. So we have had a 400% increase of allergies since GMOs were introduced into the food supply, and I believe the GMOs are the primary reason. Then we also, because that's corn, predominantly corn or soy. And then the third type of GMO I call HT to stand, I mean, sorry, to go along with HT, herbicide tolerant, the first one I mentioned, Roundup Ready, and BT, the second one, which is bacteriotherogenesis, and that's the one that's a built-in pesticide.
So,
The third one I call DT, desired trait, which many refer to that as well. And it's when a GMO has a desired trait, such as more vitamin A, or apples that don't brown, or potatoes that don't brown. And the fact is, though, they're still rotting. You just don't see it. The browning has actually been masked. So so then you've got a genetically modified organism that has a desired trait. However, what comes along with it, according to many preliminary studies, multiple preliminary studies, is um, undesired mutations, unwanted, unintended mutations that happen when they tinker with the RNA in that desired trait genetically modified organism, which they're saying is not a GMO, but it actually is. They're getting unintended consequences. Thousands of off-target mutations are happening. And I, for one, have a lot of other things to worry about with my kids, exposure to inappropriate social media and drugs and you know sports and homework and all kind allergies and all kinds of other things. I don't need to have to worry about unintended mutations,
right.
in my off-target mutations in my kids. So I would rather not feed my children these types of GMOs, and that's why I've been working for 12 years to make sure that they're not in the food supply, and or at least have them labeled. And so that's been quite a challenge.
And one of the things with glyphosate as well is anybody who knows me or talks to me for more than a few minutes can't get by without me mentioning the microbiome. And the glyphosate not only will kill the weeds, but it kills all the microbes in the soil. So not only are the target plants, not being killed by the glyphosate because they're made glyphosate resistant, but it kills all the microbes. So the plants that are being harvested are so nutrient deficient. You need the microbes in the soil to convert the vitamins and enable the plant to draw up the nutrients so that you have nutrient rich food. And I'm not sure if it was with you or someone else, but someone was mentioning the fact that if they compared the iron levels in spinach, that you needed 158 times more volume to equal the same amount of iron from just 20 years ago. So again,
Yeah.
it's not only is the food potentially toxic, not only is the toxin on the food, especially when they're spraying it pre-harvest, but now we have the food that's deficient as well. So you really get nailed all around.
Yeah,
And
and that deficiency of minerals and vitamins is just traumatic to the body. Like the body can't function the way it's normally supposed to, like the
right,
prefrontal cortex, if it doesn't get vitamin Bs, which we showed was completely deficient in fast food that was tested. You'd have to, if you wanted to get your vitamin B3 level recommended daily intake in one day, you'd have to eat 380 Chick-fil-A sandwiches. I'd have to eat
right,
333 of them, right, to get a recommended level of vitamin B3. And you would get no B9 or no B12. And those are essential for prefrontal cortex, development, which means not making poor decisions and being violent. And there's been a direct correlation to violence and a deficiency in vitamin B in America. And
right,
my next book, I know you're reading three wonderful books there, but the next book I would suggest that you read is Food and Behavior: A Natural Connection by Barbara Reed Stitt,
right,
a Lifetime Achievement Award winner who studied the food supply for over 20 years. So, and she showed a direct correlation between violent behavior in prisons, dropouts in high schools, astonishing levels such as a 70% recidivism rate, which reversed instead of 70% going in, coming into prison and going out and coming back again within the first year, 70% coming in, going out and staying out.
right,
When they switch the food over to whole healthy food. Same thing with high school. Instead of 500 dropping out, only 14 dropped out when the food switched over to whole healthy food. And that is directly correlated. What's going on in the gut, like you mentioned, the microbiome is it's a causational matter to what's going on in the brain, because when they're when the gut microbiome it's not just a nutrition thing as well. I want to touch on that. So there's the nutrition aspect of what the brain is getting, or the organs in the body, but also glyphosate, as you mentioned, microbiome it is a antimicrobial. It
right.
kills the beneficial gut bacteria and allows for the proliferation of the pathogenic gut bacteria in the gut. It targets the beneficial gut bacteria. So, what that means is the beneficial gut bacteria, which is the stronghold of the immune system, now means that you now have a weaker immune system, more likely to get sick. Hello, look what happened at COVID in America, where we
Right.
eat some of the highest levels of glyphosate in the world. It also means that that stronghold, that good bacteria that normally holds serotonin in it, is and melatonin, things that help us sleep, the hormones that make us feel satiated. The place where that serotonin and melatonin is made and stored is impaired by glyphosate, and therefore our ability to feel satiated is impaired. Our ability to sleep is impaired, and the satiation, that feeling content, means further addictions, porn and drugs and gambling and anger and obsessive thoughts, and all of that type of thing is increased by consuming glyphosate. And that has been proven time and time again. And we have on our website, we have a data page with glyphosate. You'll, I'm sure, show people
Yeah,
that
let me
the
go there.
science that we're talking about is all there on Moms Across America. And the gut microbiome being destroyed by glyphosate is also impacts so it impacts the immune system. There goes data on toxins. If you scroll down, you will see, yeah, there you are. Just scroll down there
So
and
this
you'll
is her
see all.
website, you guys. This is
Mhm.
momsacrossamerica.com.
Yeah,
And
and all
and
of the or
across
.org either.
here,
Yep.
this is the ones. By the way, I want to push this a little bit. I've
Yep.
used this twice in my life and I noticed symptom improvements within days.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yep.
gut support is
Thank
wonderful
you,
for
Dr.
restoring the
Bush.
integrity. Uh, wonderful restoring the integrity of your gut lining, and then allowing you to heal yourself. So it's
I call it my magic water because it
yeah,
tastes just like water.
yep.
And I started noticing we're off topic here, but I just started noticing that I used it a couple years ago and symptoms improved so much. And it took me a while to actually correlate it with this. And I just rebought it again through your website, and again, symptoms improved within days.
Right. That's
And so
great.
now I refer
Wonderful.
to it as my magic water.
Yeah, it's
I'm
wonderful
sorry.
for people with gut issues. If you have severe gut issues, I'm not a doctor, but what I hear is suggested just to take like a quarter of a teaspoon at a time.
I take a
Yeah, so here's
squirt. It has a spout on the top where you can just I just keep it on the corner of my cabinet, and when I'm
yeah,
ever walking by, I'll just take a quick
yeah,
squirt.
little
It's like
squirt.
a
Yeah,
couple
it's
tablespoons.
fine. But
Yeah.
my point is don't take a lot if you have severe gut issues because you might feel some cramping. So you want to take just a little bit at a time to start off with. So here's the glyphosate herbicide studies, and there's all kinds of studies here to show what we're talking about with
Right.
the harmful impacts of glyphosate. And you mentioned the microbiome, so I started going into how it is an antimicrobial, but I want to mention that glyphosate functions in three different ways. It's an antibiotic, antimicrobial. It is also a chelator, meaning it grabs onto and makes unavailable the vital nutrients of any living thing it touches. And it's also an endocrine disruptor. So that means that it impacts the hormone systems in the body. It's also a neurotoxin and causes nervous system damage. So there's actually many ways in which it functions. And Stephanie Seneff in the book that you're reading too, The Toxic Legacy, she describes how glyphosate replaces glycine and I cannot go there and describe what all of that means. She can do that. But it is extremely harmful to the body, in addition to, killing off the beneficial gut bacteria.
Yeah, and you touched on it, the connection between nutrition and mental illness or mental health is just a direct correlation. And one of the documentaries that I have on my handout that I really refer patients, and I've watched it many times, and I'm sure you have too, is Healthy Diet for a Healthy Brain. And they go in there about those hamster studies that you mentioned, lacking the B vitamins. They go into the prison studies. And, it makes perfect sense because 80% of our neurotransmitters are made in the gut. And when you have leaky gut, you have this substance called lipopolysaccharide, which is extremely inflammatory, which is a chemical that when the bacteria die, they secrete. And it's supposed to stay in the stool and go down through the toilet, but instead it crosses the interstitial space, gets into your bloodstream, and then gets into your brain. So it just creates this general state of anxiety and tension that can be turned around very quickly with modifying the diet. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, and
here's
it's really unfortunate because it's so prevalent in our diet, and you can see there's just hundreds and hundreds. This is not even all the studies
and
that are
look at people, pay attention. I'm an OBGYN. Look at how many of these apply to OBGYN issues. I mean, baby girls in the womb, uh,
reproductive issues
nervous
right there.
system. I mean, there are so many places here to look. And this is, like you said, this
Urinary, yeah,
tip of the
it's
iceberg. Breast cancer.
I think there might even be a whole section just on reproductive issues. My assistant might have been adding, new studies to the top, but I think if you keep scrolling down, there might be a whole section. Here's one
Wow.
just on insects, one just on soil, water, and farming. This
Right.
is all
And
glyphosate.
marine
Here's one
life.
on
I
marine life.
mean,
There it is, reproductive issues.
yeah.
These are older studies, but yeah, they are there. Impacts of glyphosate on reproductive hormones, the maternal urinary levels, women born
Wow.
near women
These are
having babies near
exactly.
farms.
Yeah. Excellent. Wow. What a public service you've done putting this together. Do you mind
Thank you.
talking a few minutes about what got you into this? Are you a PhD molecular biologist or are you
Absolutely, absolutely not. You might want to stop screen sharing though, just so I can
okay?
see your lovely face bigger. But yeah, so I was a fashion designer before this, and I went to school at a top-notch boarding school when I was 14. I was a go-getter. I moved away from home and got a scholarship. I went to a private boarding school, same one actually that John F. Kennedy went to, and so I got kind of a college education at a high school level. I loved reading when I was a kid. My dad threw out the TV when I was in fourth grade, so I read a lot
Oh,
of books. I wanted to be a scientist. However, I was not great at math. I had a very cranky math teacher that really sort of turned me off to math. And I figured I couldn't be a scientist because I wasn't fabulous at math. I was much more of a creative thinker. My mom wanted me to be a writer, and my dad wanted me to be a lawyer because I was pretty darn good at arguing. So, and was not
So
afraid.
putting all that together, what? Fashion designer.
So, yeah, so I kind of just rebelled, when I was 16, 17, 18. I decided I wanted to be an artist because there was no right or wrong. With art, whatever you create is it, it's new, it's fresh. And so I was very creative, and I got a scholarship to Parsons School of Design out of high school, and became, a fashion designer for 7 years. However, when I learned about one of my fashion designer friends whose mother died from cancer, I asked, what did she die? And she said endocrine disrupting chemicals. I'm like, what is that? I don't think I'd ever heard that word before. And her mom died when she was 57, and I must have been 20, 26 or 28 or something like that. And she said, well, there, parabens in the body care products and lotions and creams and shampoos and things like that. So I started actually reading the labels. I wasn't reading the labels before that. I just assumed that everything that was on the product store shelves was fine, that, the body care and food and all that.
Well,
I started reading the labels.
certainly we had government agencies that would make sure that nothing we did was unsafe.
Oh, we're paying taxes.
Right.
So aren't the government, regulatory agencies supposed to be doing their job? Yeah, that's just what I thought. And then around the same time, I had a little boy, a baby boy, and I saw an article I was living in California at the time, in the Los Angeles Times, about the biologists that do their regular check on fish off the coast of Malibu. And 50% of these fish for a regular checkup were found to be hermaphrodites.
Hmm.
And what they were blaming was the parabens, and that's when the bell went off, because my friend's mother died of these endocrine disruptors. The parabens found in sunscreen, and also the hormones found in birth control. And it just dawned on me, holy cow, all these women are taking birth control and peeing out this birth control, into our water supply. All of these sunscreens, which are, being applied to thousands and thousands of people along the coast every single day, in 1 mile even. And all of those chemicals are going into the ocean and changing the actual sex hormones and the bodies, the reproductive organs of these fish. What is that doing to my son? When I'm bathing him, is he bathing in endocrine disrupting chemicals? So I started looking into that, and I decided to create a company called Zen's Purple Garden, and I made a whole line of lavender products that were paraben free. And I made a sleep sachet and a baby blanket and a heating heart and all these different things with my pattern making skills, from fashion design, and with my skills to direct sample hands. So I hired sample hands in the Santa Ana area, and I had this beautiful collection of Chinese silk brocade, lavender, based products, baby blankets and heating hearts and things like sachets and things, and then also body care products. And I did that for 7 years. But that was my segue into natural wellness and chemicals, in
Awareness
products.
of it, right?
And yeah, and eventually got to the point where I needed to take out a huge amount of money for insurance because I was getting accepted into stores. I did that for 7 years as well. And I decided I did not want to go into that kind of debt. I had 3 children by then, and I was just kind of overwhelmed with their food allergies. So I stopped. I just closed Zen's Purple Garden, and 6 months later, and during that time, actually that summer, like pretty much right away, I found out about GMOs from Robin O'Brien's TED Talk, Patriotism on a Plate. And then I watched Jeffrey Smith's movie, Genetic Roulette, and learned about GMOs. And I said, holy cow, there has been genetically modified organisms at this point. At that point, it was corn and soy and sugar. The 85 to 95% of the crops had been converted to GMOs without me ever knowing about it, without ever seeing anything in the mainstream news about it. I remembered hearing about a GMO tomato when I was in my 20s in New York City when I was a fashion designer. And I was so mad about it. I was like, they're genetically engineering a tomato with fish genes in order to make the tomato not, spoil in the cold. How can they put fish genes into a tomato and not tell us? I was so mad about it. And when I talked to people about it, they looked at me like I had a third eye. Like, what are you talking about? Like they had never heard about it either. So, so anyway, let me just silence my phone for a second. I'm so sorry. So I was suddenly very betrayed by the fact that the government had allowed these genetically modified organisms into the food supply without telling us. There was really like a dark cloud of depression that came over me for 3 days because my illusions about the world had been shattered. Right. I suddenly realized that the government was not protecting us. They were not doing anything in our best interest to let us know what was going on in the food supply. And I began, actually reading all these labels and actually seeing all these chemicals in our products and food. And I decided to start doing something about it. So I learned about GMOs and I became a volunteer at a local movement in Mission Viejo, California at the time. And I started passing out flyers at farmers markets, and that was not like me. I mean, before that, I would avoid the Greenpeace people at the markets. I thought they wore too much patchouli and were just had too much time on their hands. They were like fuss budgets. Like somebody who was an activist was just not cool in my eyes. And so I, really had some opinions there. And when I
So
started,
you were just, so here we are back. You were just talking about how you had um, ended your company. You were starting to learn about GMOs. It was making you angry. And then I think your children had food allergies around that same time. And then you
yes, so
started making
yes,
a connection, right?
they had a lot of food allergies. We didn't understand why, and for a long time, I was very resigned about that. And I, figured out that the GMOs are foreign proteins and cause the body, to have inflammation. I didn't know about the gut dysbiosis and the holes in the stomach then, but I did have my son go. I created a partnership with him, asked him if he wanted to get better. He said yes. And so we learned together about GMOs. He was 9 years old at the time. We went GMO free, and within 4 months, he was dramatically better. And when my second son had autism symptoms, I really suspected glyphosate, destroying his gut microbiome because he was eating wheat. The other two children were not, and he was the one with the autism symptoms. And I tested him, and lo and behold, he had the level of glyphosate in his body as same as a farmer, and the other two did not, and no detect. So he was being impacted by glyphosate, and his behavior showed that. And so when we went glyphosate free and organic, completely organic, within 6 weeks, his glyphosate levels were no longer detectable, and his autism symptoms were gone. And
Wow.
during that time for a year going completely organic, my eldest son's allergies that were in 19, they were life threatening to nuts. They went down to a 0.2. So he no longer has life-threatening allergies, and that is because we allowed the body to heal itself by going organic and by putting in things like sauerkraut and probiotics and uh, kefir and kombucha, good gut bacteria in the gut. And, we may have, I don't know, I know this is a lot about this shows a lot about reproductive issues as well. We may be preventing sperm damage and reproductive organ damage and definitely brain health, all of that by going organic and protecting the gut. So it was that process in seeing my children get better and learning about GMOs and glyphosate that had me say, wait a second, everybody needs to know about this, especially the GMO study that showed that the third generation of rats that ate GMOs were sterile. I said, I would like my children to someday be able to have their own child if they would like to, and experience the profound love that it is to be able to experience the birth and the creation of one's own child. I think they should have that right to do that if they'd like to. That's what the body was made to do. However, if our people in our community and around the world keep eating glyphosate, that's not going to happen, right? That would be very, very slim chances of that happening. So I realized that eating organic and raising awareness about the food supply was a community issue, not just you know, um, my family needs to eat organic issue. So I set to work and created Moms Across America, and our first event was to join into 4th of July parades all across the country to raise awareness with thousands locally and millions nationally in a single day. And we did that. We had 179 groups join into 4th of July parades, and reached millions of people in a single day. And we then had over 600 leaders log events in the back end of our website over the next 5 years. And they created 1,000 events in all 50 states. So I'm very proud of our moms. This is not just me. This is a network of at least 3,000 volunteers now that are raising awareness. Well, we've distributed at least 500,000 flyers. We had 78 million impressions over the past 7 years on social media, which has been highly shadow banned. I'm sure it would be hundreds of millions more if we weren't being so shadow banned. And then we've also been in over a dozen movies, and I've published my book in 2 countries, in the US and in Japan, and toured 9 cities in Japan and spoken in probably a dozen countries around the world. It's just been
Wow.
an extraordinary opportunity to get the word out and share with people that they can, in fact, heal. Their bodies are amazing. And if you stop eating glyphosate and toxic chemicals and GMOs, your body can begin to heal itself. And I've heard many reproductive stories as well. I'm going to share a link with you to this woman named Alice Gleason that I met in New Zealand. Sorry, it was Australia, and she had just gone to a talk from Vandana Shiva, and she learned about GMOs. And she shares in her video that her father called her and said, "Daughter, I think I'm dying from these toxic chemicals on the corn." This experimental corn crop that got put into their city, I mean, sorry, into their village in Africa, a very small village in Africa. They were a test plot for GMOs, and they were spraying glyphosate and toxic chemicals on the crops, and everybody was getting diabetes, and the soil was so destroyed. It had been sprayed for 2 or 3 years, I think, at that point. And the soil was so destroyed, they couldn't grow cowpeas and beans and these other crops that they usually grow to feed their village members. So instead, they were all just growing this corn to export, but no food to feed themselves. They were taking away their sustainability, and the people were starving. So GMOs don't actually feed the world. They in some cases can starve the world and kill the world. The chemicals were killing people. And she herself had had 9 miscarriages. And then she decided, oh, wait a second, I'm going to stop drinking this milk with GMOs in it and probably glyphosate, and this bread that she's been eating, all kinds of bread products with glyphosate on it. She stopped doing all that. She switched to organic. She got pregnant when she was 39 years old, got pregnant. She had 3 children in her late 30s and early 40s. And that didn't happen until she went to eat organic. So if there's anything that your listeners hear out of this, it's please go 100% organic in order to allow your body to heal. And I really do mean 100% if you have inflammation, because if you think about it, you can't put out a campfire with a teaspoon of oil, of fuel. You have to stop putting fuel on the campfire all together for the inflammation and for the fire to go out. So please do, make a commitment to yourself and your body to go 100% organic. Start with a couple weeks, then do a couple months, and then I think you'll see, the improvements in your sleep and your health and your ability to detox. I mean, really, glyphosate impacts your liver and your kidney, so that means no bueno for detoxing. And when you've got, toxins in your body, very complicated in the process of getting pregnant. It impacts, increases the ability, the chances of getting autism and Alzheimer's. So you really want your liver and your kidney to function well. And there's a lot of herbs and supplements you can do to support that, but going organic is the first thing to do.
And the one thing about glyphosate, again, when you start understanding how prevalent it is and how much it's being used and how many different ways it can harm us, it can be pretty discouraging. But the good news is we can legislate to get rid of it. And that's really where I think the conversation needs to go, because this is not something in our universe or solar system that we have no control over. 88, I think 88 other countries have outlawed it, right? And places like Mexico and
Yeah, it
Europe.
might be 88 now. I've been saying 64, but I mean it's been a couple years, so you might be
Yeah.
right about that. There's a lot of countries that and they haven't necessarily all outlawed it. They've restricted it. A lot of them have restricted, some have banned it. And like Mexico is trying to do that right now, and they're getting a lot of pushback from the US. It's a big power play. There's other countries that have restricted it, and there's other countries that have been bullied, like the United States has bullied Japan to increase their glyphosate residue levels by 600% compared to what they used to be. And I believe this is why, I'm sorry to get political here, but it's my opinion, this is why Trump visited President Abe first. That was the very first country that he visited back in 2017, and by 2016, and by 2018, Japan had been forced to open its borders to GMO seeds.
Mm,
And then the level of glyphosate residues went up by 600%. And this is, I believe, because China had stopped buying a lot of the GMO seeds from the United States, and of course the United States needed a market for their GMO seeds. It is a major the agriculture industry is a huge part of the American economy. And so Trump needed to take care of that, and he made sure that there was a buyer for the GMO seeds, and that was the Japanese government. The Japanese government owns the largest grain distribution center in the world, and it's in New Orleans. They own the 85 grain distribution, gathering places along the Mississippi River, and those grains go from the Mississippi River and from the U.S. to Japan, and then they're distributed to China and Taiwan and Korea and all of those places. So um, I think there was a power play too with Trump getting buddy buddy with North Korea, because that was a direct threat to Japan.
mm,
And if Japan didn't open its borders to GMOs and these crops in the agriculture industry, that would be a problem. That U.S. could take away their military base in Okinawa. This is just hypothesis on my part right now, but
right.
that the person who is in control of the seeds and the food supply controls the world. And so it's very much a power play by governments around the world to be able to have access to food, or to be able to sell food, whether it's toxic or not. And the US apparently does not care if the seeds that they're selling other countries are toxic. They don't care. In fact, it puts them in a higher position of power, because if we make the people in Japan and South Korea and Taiwan, all these places, sick, the US government then impacts their ability to thrive and makes the United States more powerful. And I think that is chemical warfare.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and we know another political candidate who's actually running in the race this time, Bobby Jr. And I was listening to a podcast with him and regenerative farmers, and it also broke the myth that I had had that these glyphosate fields are actually more productive. I mean, I of course agreed that they were toxic, but at least if the volume was the key, that made a certain amount of sense, only to find out that these regenerative farmers who used to use chemicals, who are now not using chemicals, can be totally competitive with the chemical fields as far as volume and production.
Yeah,
So
the yield.
it's another myth that we need these chemicals to feed the world. We don't, and they're just poisoning the world.
No,
And
the corporations just need to sell them in order to make profits and be able to buy a third home.
right,
That's what
right.
they need.
So how can people help moms across America?
Well, they can join us by signing up for our newsletter on momsacrossamerica.org or .com, and you click on connect and sign up for our newsletter. You can sign up to volunteer. We love it when people order our. You just send us an email to get a packet of our flyers and brochures, things like that. But please also do, when you sign up for our newsletter, open the newsletter and get the invitation every Monday to join our Moms Connect calls on Monday nights. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we have Mom Connects calls along with our Neighborhood Food Network calls sometimes. We talk about growing our own food. We have scientists and doctors and lawyers and farmers and researchers on our Moms Connect calls sometimes. Sometimes it's just me talking about the news, but it's a discussion. It's not a show, it's a conversation. We have, 50 to 100 people from across the country chiming in. I learn something every time from our network, and then it goes up on Rumble, and thousands of people can watch it later on if they wish to. And we're finally now starting to get a videographer to slice and dice and edit and have short clips from those videos so that people can watch, some key points of the video, and get access to our information more readily. So
And then
please join us.
you
Mhm.
mentioned the other show with Dr. Perro and Dr. Senef.
Yes, it's called the New MDs, and that stands for Moms, Doctors, and Scientists Working Together to Heal Our Children. And we hope that you will join us on the third Tuesday of every month at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you cannot join us live at that time, it will be up on Rumble. And so you can find us on Facebook and Rumble. And I'm not sure if we're still on YouTube or not. I think we've gotten taken down from there. So that is a great
Maybe
show
the
because,
organization is, but you're all over your YouTube. I mean, there are hundreds of videos of
okay, good. Yeah.
us and yours
So
on
I'm still,
YouTube.
some of our, yeah, some of our things are still up on YouTube, but the moms, doctors, and scientists, I just want to say, is Dr. Michelle Perro, who wrote a book called What's Making Our Children Sick. It's imperative to read as a parent. And then Dr. Stephanie Seneff is the scientist, and she's the one that wrote Toxic Legacy, all about glyphosate. And then myself, I'm the mom, even though they're both moms too. Yeah, and my book is Unstoppable, and that's available at on Amazon. And it's really a community effort. My book, it's farmers, doctors, scientists, researchers, lawyers, all kinds of people, and my personal story. And I've had people tell me it made them cry. Like it's relatable, I
Absolutely.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I really appreciate the opportunity to share this with you and your listeners. And I want to mention one more thing about fertility. There are many studies showing that women exposed to glyphosate have a 30 to 70% higher risk of miscarriage and preterm birth. And there's a lawsuit out right now about formula that's being given to babies in the NICU, right? They're preterm birth babies, so they have a decreased ability to be able to nurse, right? And so they are given formula, like no matter what you want to do, your baby will be given formula. And that formula has been leading to many types of stomach problems. And I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the particular disease that they're suing for right now, but these formulas are being linked to sick chronic illness and dysfunction of the gut. And that can lead to lifelong developmental issues and problems, even death in some babies. So as much as I am happy to see that there's a lawsuit holding the formula companies to account, I would like there to be lawsuits holding Monsanto slash now Bayer to account for the glyphosate causing the problem in the first place, right? Like they wouldn't be having so many preterm babies on formula if the mothers weren't being exposed to glyphosate on a daily basis through the food supply or through neighbors spraying Roundup or farms spraying Roundup. So I'd like to get to the source of that, and I want everybody to know about glyphosate. So I hope that you'll read my book and Stephanie's book and Dr. Michelle Perro's book, and you'll share this podcast, especially with people who are thinking to get pregnant. Because when you do go organic within 1 or 2 weeks, you can see anywhere from 70 to 100% lower levels, basically get the glyphosate out of your urine if you're doing testing. And if you do testing, I recommend Health Research Institute labs. John Fagan and his team are people we've worked with repeatedly. And you can see our test results on momsacrossamerica.org. We've tested school lunches, we've tested wine, orange juice, beer, tap water, breast milk,
Breast
urine,
milk, breast milk.
breast milk. Yes, glyphosate was found in breast milk, up to 3,000 times higher than has been shown to cause sex hormone changes
It would be
in
wonderful. Have
animal
you ever
studies.
heard of insurance paying for checking glyphosate levels any place? Because I
I don't know, but
investigated
they
that
could
here.
it's possible they could be doing that now. We started the glyphosate testing in 2013 slash we put the results out in 2014. So it's been quite a while now, and insurance may cover it now. I have no idea.
Local lab
But
here will do it for $129 because I was
right.
thinking during the preconceptual or even I see a lot of the pregnant patients in our practice very early when they're still like 6 to 8 weeks along. And to actually show them a toxin level, I thought would be really helpful for motivation
Yep.
because there is a cognizant dissonance here.
Yes.
There is this concept that things really can't be as bad as you say they are, Zen. I
Yeah.
mean, seriously, we live in a country that takes care of us, that protects us. And the way you're making it sound, it's so apocalyptic. and and so I think if we actually could test levels in patients and say, hey, here's your level, and here's some information about how this is going to harm you and your future baby, there might be helpful with motivation. And so I'm going to keep working on that angle because, we might be able to get some insurances to pay for it. I mean, the big one, of course, would be
Yeah.
to get Medicare and Medicaid to pay for it. But
Yeah. Well, Scott, when the saying, when you do what you love, all the world conspires with you.
right.
Well, just in the past few weeks, I've been talking to the lab, Health Research Institute lab, about doing a program where we would test women who want to get pregnant, who are struggling with fertility. Not we would test, we would encourage them to
Mhm.
get tested before and do a detox program and then get tested afterwards and see the increased ability of getting pregnant. And so if you would like to be a part of that, or if your patients would
Oh,
like to be a part of that,
please, please.
we're currently looking for different detox programs to recommend, but we're not doctors, so we can't really, and detoxing is very complicated. So we would like to work with another doctor or to have the detox programs, support the patients in the detoxing, because obviously it's, a lot of problems can happen if you don't detox properly. So, but we want to see before and after detoxing. So like you're saying, your patients will actually see the results of, what's, it's called
Change
like just what's
lifestyle,
so
right?
what is actually happening in your body. Because if you don't know what's so in your body, treating it or trying to do anything about it, you could be throwing vitamins down the toilet, right? Or you could be taking the wrong vitamins, right? If or minerals or whatever it is that you need to do. So getting a baseline of what's actually happening in your body. I personally go to a functional medicine doctor to get, thousands of dollars of tests done every year, because I just think that's a better investment than actually, throwing that money at things that don't work if you don't know what's happening in your body. So
Right.
I highly recommend that.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah,
Well,
great.
again, we have just barely touched on a
Mhm.
tip of the iceberg here, but people go to Moms Across America, search Zen Honeycutt on Rumble, on YouTube, on Instagram. You're pretty much everywhere. And she's got,
We're also on TikTok. We're growing the fastest on TikTok, and I think that's why many government members want to take down TikTok.
cool,
So
interesting.
yeah.
I started a quick TikTok just talking about another toxin that comes in the form of a needle, and my account
Mhm.
was taken off in 3 days.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah,
And
we've gotten a few taken down because we mentioned that.
anyway,
Yeah, we didn't think that the censorship was happening there, but it has happened a few times.
yeah.
So
All
it's
right. Well,
unfortunate. Yeah.
again, thank you very much. And let's make this the first of many, hopefully. I
Thank
wish
you,
you well.
Scott. Thank
Okay.
you to your wife. Appreciate you both so much. Take
All right.
care.
Bye.
Bye bye.